You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Welcome in, everybody, and thank you for spelunking into the Matt Cave this week. I hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. Today's episode is going to be all about grit, goals, and questionable defending. And yeah, that means I'm going to be talking about Real Salt Lake, but I'm also going to talk about the U.S. men's national team's gritty Gold Cup run and the Utah Mammoth's strategic moves in free agency. So, really, let's just get into it. Thank you all for being here. As always, rate, review, like, subscribe, comment, thumbs up, wherever it is, however you listen. It does help, and I will talk about that every week. So, that's really the crux of it. So, let's dive into things here. First off with Real Salt Lake versus St. Louis City FC. St. Louis City FC is a newer team in the MLS. They only came in 2023 when the MLS was all expansion happy. I think there's too many teams. The MLS is just not deep, and the talent pool is just not there. I mean, it could be there, but that's always the tease with America, right? It could be better. We could have better players in the pipeline. We could have the most talented team in the world. But it's just never going to work out that way because the money's not there. And what I mean by the money's not there, I don't mean like player contracts, like when they make it to professional soccer. I mean building the ground up, like the grassroots and all of that stuff. Like, it's expensive to play competitive soccer, and it was expensive even when I was a kid growing up. Like, if you want to get into the more competitive scene outside of the AYSO, the American Youth Soccer Organization, you got to travel. You got to have parents that are willing to foot the bill for you to travel with competitive teams. And nobody can afford that, really. It's expensive. It's expensive to play American football. It's expensive to play basketball. Like, it's just too expensive to play these sports now. Which is why other countries have the edge. Because if you go to South America, any country, there's going to be soccer everywhere. They're going to find a space to play. They don't need a field. They don't need goalposts. They can just figure it out themselves. Same thing goes in Europe and pretty much everywhere in the world, except for in the U.S. And that's why there's not this young talent coming up. There's not this surge of young talent. And that's the problem. So there's my little tangent about MLS expanding too much, and the quality on the pitch or on the field is just not going to be good. It just isn't. Case in point, Real Salt Lake versus St. Louis. So this game wrapped up 3-2, and I'm going to be real with you. Real Salt Lake just isn't good this year. Just period. With Diego Luna or without Diego Luna, the team is just not good. There were 2 own goals in this match, one from each side. The St. Louis own goal, completely understandable. It happened on a breakaway for Real Salt Lake, and the defender tried to cut off a pass into the box, which was a great pass, and he kicked it into his own net past his own goalkeeper. If he didn't even try to do that, maybe the goalkeeper could have come out and made the stop, or I think Xavier Gozo of Real Salt Lake would have been there before the goalkeeper to knock it in. So, completely understandable. Real Salt Lake's own goal, on the other hand, I didn't even see it when I was playing soccer when I was, 12, 13 years old. What happened was it was a corner kick for St. Louis SC. They kicked it off, and the Real Salt Lake player wasn't even paying attention. Like, he was kind of paying attention because he saw the St. Louis player react, but Noel Caliscan just wasn't... I don't even know what he was defending, in all honesty. I don't know what he was doing. And so what happened is the ball came in and it hit off his shoulder and went into the net. Goal for St. Louis. That's unacceptable at professional play. When a corner comes in, you have to be facing the ball. You have to know what's going on. He wasn't. He was turned around, and it went off his own shoulder, basically off the back of his head, really, and into the net. That's unacceptable. Unacceptable play. The other goal Real Salt Lake allowed was off of a corner. Again, another set piece. Real Salt Lake is terrible at defending set pieces this season, which is really odd because that's a calling card of manager Pablo Mascheroni. He coaches really good defense, really solid defense, aware defense. And in this game, and many others, set-piece defense is terrible. I mean, the rest of the defense is terrible too, but set pieces specifically for Real Salt Lake this season have been a big bugaboo. The best player on St. Louis, so the best player, Joao Klaus, basically went unmarked in this corner. The closest guy to him was Justin Glad, and Justin Glad wasn't even marking anybody. He was standing and marking air, and that's not how you play defense on a set piece. The best clubs in the world, and not even the best clubs in the world, the best clubs in MLS, they mark players and they identify who the biggest threats are, and they make sure they cover that person. I don't know what happened on this play, but Joao Klaus got free somehow, and he didn't even get free. He wasn't marked. And so the corner kick came in, went off Klaus's head and into the net. And the only defending that happened was Justin Glad maybe getting close and shoving him in the back a little bit to hopefully knock him off course. That was the defending. That's unacceptable. So that's the defense we can expect for the rest of the season, because that's the defense we've had all season. And on the flip side, though, the 2 goals that Real Salt Lake did score that weren't an own goal were actually really nice. So off of a corner kick, it was during the recovery period. The ball got kicked out to Noel Caliscan, and he hit a cracker of a shot from outside the box, and it went into the net. And the commentators said he's probably not going to hit another ball as sweetly as he did there, and I agree. That was just a wonderful, once-in-a-lifetime hit for Caliscan that went into the net. That was a great goal. And if you look at his reaction, Caliscan's reaction, he wasn't expecting that to go in either. He was as shocked as everybody else in the stadium. So I think he wasn't really expecting it. He just figured, you know what, I have some space here. Nothing's really happening. I'm just going to launch it. And that's why you take risks, because it went in. And Real Salt Lake went up 1-0 in the 5th minute. So that was really cool. The other goal came from Diogo Gonçalves, my guy from last season that I thought was going to do better. It hasn't turned out that way. But he curled in a beautiful shot from the left side of the box. He kicked it inside. He got his defender off balance. He pushed it inside onto his right foot and curled it past the keeper. Beautiful goal. And that was only his 2nd goal on the season. I don't understand. Because he leads the team in shots on goal, even more than Diego Luna. I mean, sometimes luck just isn't on your side, but I got to feel like he just keeps hitting it straight at the goalkeeper instead of around the goalkeeper, trying to go far side, near side, just get away from the goalkeeper. But it is what it is, I suppose. So, yeah, they won, but the defense is horrible. Absolutely putrid. And like I said earlier, that's been the calling card of Pablo Mastroeni. It's been defense, but this year it's just not there. And even with Diego Luna scoring like 9 goals this year, they're still 4th worst in the West. And they've only beaten teams that are worse than them. But they did lose to the Galaxy for the Galaxy's first win of this season. And in fact, it's one of their only 2 that the Galaxy have this year. So it's just not great. They have a -6 goal differential, which isn't as bad as it was last year. But as we move forward throughout the rest of this season, I don't know. You can't blame injuries because Justin Glad and Catranis have been healthy for most of the year. Like I said, it pulled Real Salt Lake above St. Louis by 1 point, so now they're 4th worst instead of 3rd worst. So if there was relegation, which is what FIFA wants MLS to have, they're barely above the relegation zone. Let's put it that way. Luna is off with the U.S. men's national team and absolutely thriving. He's not going to be with Real Salt Lake much longer, maybe 1 or 2 games before he's sold out. And they are unbeaten in their last 3. They have 2 wins against DC United and St. Louis City SC, and then a draw against Sporting Kansas City, who are 1 point above Real Salt Lake. So it's not like Real Salt Lake has been playing San Diego, Vancouver, or Inter Miami, Nashville, FC Cincinnati. Like, they're not facing the cream of the crop here. They're down in the dregs with everybody else, and they're not really reinforcing any hope into me. So I'm just calling it now. The 4-year playoff streak that Real Salt Lake has, which is the longest in the Western Conference, by the way, in case you were keeping track. I don't know if you were, but I was. That's coming to an end this year. I don't see any run Real Salt Lake can go on that will pull them into playoff position. And playoff position, by the way, if you aren't familiar with MLS and how it works, it's much like how the NBA used to be, where it's numbers 1 through 8, and that's who gets in. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, because to get to 8th, they're 4 points back of the Houston Dynamo. But I'm not holding my breath. From what I've seen of this team against better competition, it's just not there. So there won't be playoff soccer for Real Salt Lake this year. Now let's shift into something a little more positive, shall we? Let's move on to the U.S. men's national team. I haven't really talked about them this year because I spoke a little bit about the tournament before it kicked off, saying that I don't see this team doing very well. It's their C team, really. Their best players are either injured or just elected not to play in this tournament to get some rest, which I fully support. I know a lot of the talking heads and a lot of the old guard are saying that, it's selfish and they should be playing, and it's all about this World Cup in the U.S. in 2026. And it's just like, guys, you played a completely different calendar than these guys are playing. Christian Pulisic, Yunus Musa, Timothy Weah, Weston McKennie, Serginho Dest, Anthony Robinson, they play soccer 11 months out of the year. Landon Donovan never did that. Tim Howard never did that. Clint Dempsey never did that. And so they had a couple of months rest in between seasons so that they can gear up and get going. These guys, in this era of soccer where FIFA gives, I was about to swear there, they don't care about player safety. Just look at the game from yesterday, as of me recording this, the July 5th, between Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, against Bayern Munich, and Jamal Musiala. This game literally doesn't matter. The only thing it matters for is maybe a couple of extra bucks in their wallet and a trophy that doesn't mean anything. It's called the Club World Cup. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to play it, but FIFA is enforcing it. So they have to. And if you don't play your best players in this tournament, you get a massive fine and you are banned from that tournament moving forward, which, if I was looking at it, I would say that's fine with me. I would say that's great, and thanks for the memories. Anyway, FIFA doesn't care about player safety. So the players have to take it into their own hands, and they have, and I applaud them for it. So this team, I was not expecting anything from, and I've been very pleasantly surprised. They haven't been dominant, by the way. They have won every match they've played in, but it hasn't been pretty. The only pretty game was the first one against Trinidad and Tobago, where they won 5-0 to kick off the tournament. That was really cool. Then they went against Saudi Arabia, who, let's not forget, 4 years ago, Saudi Arabia beat Argentina in the group stage of the World Cup. And Saudi Arabia has made that day a national holiday. I think it's kind of silly, but, pretty cool. So, U.S. beat Saudi Arabia 1-0, and then they faced off against Haiti, who I didn't even know had a soccer team, but they beat Haiti 2-1. And then they went into the knockout stages. So the knockout stages, I figured, all right, maybe they'll get past the first one barely, and then they're going to lose to Canada. That didn't happen. And then Canada didn't even make it into the game against the U.S. They lost in their first knockout stage game, but the U.S. also almost lost. They faced off against Costa Rica, and the U.S. won in a shootout, 4-2, and Matt Freese almost cemented himself in as the goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team heading into the World Cup, because Matt Turner just hasn't been playing, and Zach Steffen's been injured. So those were his two main competitors, and he has shown up and showed out in this tournament. He has let in a couple of howlers, I will admit that, but with experience comes better performance. So we'll see what happens in the game today against Mexico. I'm recording this before that game kicks off, but no matter what happens in that game, this tournament has been a massive success for Mauricio Pochettino and all of the guys who did come out and play for the U.S. men's national team. So the competition hasn't been elite. Maybe 2 or 3 of those teams will make the expanded World Cup in 2026. Of those teams that the U.S. has played, I will say Guatemala, Saudi Arabia, and Costa Rica will be the ones that make the World Cup. The other ones won't. Trinidad and Tobago made the World Cup when the U.S. didn't, and that's because the U.S. fell apart. But what we look forward to next year. It's what matters is how this team played. There's a fight. There's grit. There's a sense of urgency that I haven't really seen from this team since the World Cup 4 years ago. All of the players on the team kind of have a sense of entitlement that, yeah, of course I'm going to be there because there's nobody better than me. On the one hand, that's a really good attitude to have because you need to have that attitude when you play in the highest echelon of sports. Doesn't matter the sport. Guys like Timothy Weah, Christian Pulisic, Anthony Robinson, Weston McKennie, Serginho Dest, they play or have played with some of the most elite clubs in world soccer. But when you get to the national teams, you need to throw that attitude out the window because you got to mesh with the rest of your team, and I just don't see that with these other guys, which is why the talking heads and the old guard are talking about them missing this tournament, saying they could have used this tournament to get that time to mesh together as a unit. But again, I respectfully disagree because these guys need that rest. I don't want them coming into the World Cup injured. I don't want them coming in nursing an injury that they're recovering from, and I don't want them coming in tired. And so this rest that they're getting this summer, I think will do more good than bad. But anyway, I keep getting diverted off onto that tangent there. There are 9 locks, as far as I'm concerned, for the 2026 World Cup. Christian Pulisic, obviously, he's the best player the U.S. probably has ever had. Weston McKennie, he's not quite up that high, but he's very close. Timothy Weah, same thing. Serginho Dest, if he's healthy, that's a big F because he's coming off a huge knee injury. Yunus Musah, hopefully he can either get away from AC Milan or get more playing time with AC Milan because he is still a very promising young player. I've been talking about him basically since I started this podcast, but when I started talking about him, he was 17 years old. So the guy is only 21. He's still got plenty of time to grow. Anthony Robinson is a no-brainer. Tyler Adams, again, another no-brainer. He was the captain for the U.S. men's national team at the previous World Cup, which I think unlocked Christian Pulisic to do more. And then Chris Richards, he won a trophy with Crystal Palace of the English Premier League, and Valérien Balogun, he plays for Monaco over in France. When he's healthy, he's just a goal-scoring machine. So that leaves 14 spots wide open. So at this World Cup, the FIFA has shrunk the rosters back down to 23, which is what it was pre-pandemic and pre-Qatar, because the weather in Qatar is really bad for hosting any outdoor sports. So that leaves those 14 spots. From this tournament, there are 3 more locks as far as I'm concerned. Diego Luna, no-brainer. I mean, he single-handedly beat Guatemala. Malik Tillman, who single-handedly beat a bunch of the teams before Guatemala, and Matt Freese, who was the penalty shootout hero against Costa Rica. Those are the 3 locks. I'm not saying Matt Freese, Diego Luna, and Malik Tillman should start when everybody is there, but they have set their name in stone that they will be there next year for the World Cup. So half the roster after that is still up for grabs. That's huge. And it's kind of exciting because that means the players that aren't guaranteed a spot are going to be playing extra hard because they know Mauricio Pochettino, the manager, and his team, his crew of coaches are going to be watching very closely how these guys play in the lead up to the World Cup. And not just in the friendlies that they have after the Gold Cup ends, but with their clubs. So here's my projected roster breakdown. So usually these teams, they bring 3 goalkeepers, 7 defenders, 8 midfielders, and 5 attacking players. That's usually the breakdown. Obviously, that is up to interpretation and change for the federation as well as the manager and his team of coaches. So what I have here is the 3 goalkeepers are going to be Matt Freese, it's going to be Matt Turner, and Zach Steffen. I think those are going to be the 3 goalkeepers. And I also want to tell you what teams they play for so you can kind of have an idea of the competition that they're going to be playing against. So Matt Freese is the starting goalkeeper for New York City FC here in MLS. Matt Turner is going to be the goalkeeper for Lyon. They are in French Ligue 1 over in France. And Zach Steffen is the starting goalkeeper for Colorado here in MLS. So for the defenders, I have Anthony Robinson, Serginho Dest, and Chris Richards, obviously, for my locks. Anthony Robinson plays for Fulham in the English Premier League. Chris Richards for Crystal Palace in the English Premier League. And Serginho Dest plays for PSV, the best team in the Netherlands. Other than that, it gets kind of dicey for the defenders. I have Tim Ream. I don't think he's going to play, but he is going to be a veteran presence there, coaching up the young guys, keeping them grounded, keeping them level-headed. He plays for Charlotte. He used to play for Fulham over in the English Premier League. I also have Cameron Carter-Vickers coming. He didn't play in this tournament due to injury, but he plays for Celtic, the best team in Scotland. Joe Scally, he plays for, and forgive me for mispronouncing this name, but here we go, Borussia Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga over in Germany. He's a very defensive-minded wingback, so if the U.S. has a lead, I am sure he would be subbed in for a Serginho Dest type player to bolster the back line. John Tolkien, he plays for Holstein Kiel over in the Bundesliga. They just got promoted, and they signed him over to help them stay in the Premier Division over there. And that is it for the defenders. Now I'm going to move over to the midfielders. Taylor Adams, easy. He plays for Bournemouth over in the English Premier League. Yunus Musa plays for AC Milan right now. There's been a lot of smoke swirling about him leaving. I hope he does, just so he can get more playing time. Weston McKennie plays for Juventus. He's a lock starter over there. He's a lock starter for the U.S. men's national team. Malik Tillman, like I said earlier, he also plays for PSV. He could be on the move as well, based off of his performance in this tournament. He is a very good young attacking midfielder. Luca de la Torre plays for San Diego. His home team is actually over in Spain, RC Celta Vigo. They play in the La Liga. And then also Johnny Cardoso. He had a very embarrassing own goal during friendlies against Switzerland, but I still think he's very good. In fact, I'm not the only one. Atletico Madrid of La Liga thinks so too. They signed him, and they are saying they're going to be playing him. So I want him on the squad. And then Jack McGlynn, he plays for Houston. He had a couple of really good goals in the friendlies leading up to this tournament. I think he would be a good young player to have along for the ride. He probably won't see much playing time unless the U.S. absolutely needs a goal. And then Brendan Aronson. He is a very confounding and frustrating player. He plays for Leeds United in the English, I think they just got promoted, in the English Premier League. They were in the championship last season. He can be so good, but he runs himself into the ground because he just runs in circles. Like, he just needs to play smarter, and I think he could be very good. And then the attackers. This one is a little bit easier. You have Christian Pulisic, AC Milan, Serie A, best footballer the U.S. has ever had. Flo Balogun, he plays for Monaco in the French Ligue 1 for Monaco. He is a goal-scoring machine. Timothy Weah plays for Juventus. I have him as an attacker, but he can play all over the pitch. He can play midfield, defender. He can play attacking. He's a jack of all trades. Ricardo Pepi, when he's healthy, he is also a goal-scoring machine for PSV over in the Netherlands. And then Diego Luna obviously plays for Real Salt Lake for now, but I'm expecting a move away from Real Salt Lake. Is this roster good enough to win the World Cup? Absolutely and unequivocally not. Is it good enough to advance to the knockout rounds? Definitely. And as we saw in Qatar in the last World Cup, anything can happen when the knockout stages begin. I mean, just look at Morocco. Like, they made it to the semifinals of the World Cup because they got hot. So that is my prediction for the team. It's a good mix of veterans and high upside youth. It's balanced. And with what Diego Luna's doing, he may force Pochettino's hand to start. He really could as the number 10. So we'll see what happens. But I'm very encouraged by what I've seen from this team, this particular roster, and the fight they have, and what that will bring to the team when the World Cup begins next summer. All right, let's wrap things up with the Utah Mammoth and their first real true free agency as a franchise. So I already talked about the J.J. Peterka trade, how it was a home run grand slam. Couldn't have gone better for the Mammoth. Just trading away Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring kind of hurts, but when you get a player like J.J. Peterka for just that, I mean, come on. Didn't he have to give up a draft pick or even pay any sort of like salary or anything? And they signed the kid to a 5-year deal. My goodness. Anyway, I already gushed about that trade last week if you want to hear about it. Notable signings from the free agent period that began on my birthday, July 1st. Nate Schmidt and Vitek Vanacek from the Florida Panthers. They just won the Stanley Cup. That's very important. Brandon Tanev from Winnipeg. He's a very good player. He is a get-your-nose-dirty, high-energy type of veteran that will bring a lot to this young core that the Mammoth have. And then Utah also re-signed Kyler Yamamoto after initially letting him go. So that's really good, too. Kyler Yamamoto, I saw him a couple of times live. The dude is fast. Now, he just needs to keep that speed under control, and he can cause some havoc. So this isn't a flashy free agency period. These guys aren't going to score 40 goals a year, but what they bring is what Utah needs: leadership, grit, and playoff experience. Brandon Tanev got to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs last year with Winnipeg. Obviously, Vitek Vanacek and Nate Schmidt got to the Stanley Cup final and won. So it's very good. The goal scoring, that was addressed with J.J. Peterka. Like I said last week, I think he will add enough goals to get Utah into the playoffs should the core take another step. Bill Armstrong and crew are banking on internal growth again this season, another step forward. Clayton Keller, Logan Cooley, Dylan Guenther, even Dmitry Simashev, who I think is going to make the roster day one, they're all expected to take the next step, and I think they will. Dylan Guenther needs to stay healthy. He did miss extended period last year. If he were healthy, I think Utah would have won a couple of more games, but I'm encouraged by what Bill Armstrong's doing. It's not the swing for the fences yet. I'm sure that would come during the trade deadline, I'm sure. But this offseason was more about surrounding the core with good veterans who have been there and know the route to the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's the goal. Not the Stanley Cup finals, the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's baby steps here. And we can afford to take baby steps as the Mammoth because our core is so young. Dylan Guenther's 21. Logan Cooley's 20. So there's plenty of time here. Is it the fireworks-filled offseason I hope for? Not yet. But Utah still has cap space and plenty of assets. All it takes is one disgruntled star. Connor McDavid looking at what the Oilers did this offseason and going, this is not going to get me a cup. I want to trade. Hey, Utah will be front and center there. They were front and center for Brad Marchand. So Utah is going to be aggressive now when it comes to free agents and when it comes to stars. They've got everything built out, I think, that they want. And they are very high on Karel Vejmelka, as am I. I love Veggie. I think he's going to be a very solid goalkeeper in the NHL for the Mammoth. If not spectacular, but he'll get the job done. And it just needs one. Utah just needs one of those guys. This was a calculated, patient offseason so far. With Sergachev and Ian Cole already on the roster, those guys have won a Stanley Cup. I believe Olli Mata has won a Stanley Cup as well. Now you add two more Cup winners to lead this locker room, and the sky's the limit. So the rebuild is over. The core is built. Now it's about teaching them how to win, and that's what Bill Armstrong is doing with these free agent signings. And they brought in the guys who know exactly how to do that. All right, so that's it for this week's episode of The Matt Cave. Be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. If you haven't already, drop a rating or leave a review. It really does help. And hey, if you've got takes on the U.S. men's national team roster, Mammoth free agency, or Real Salt Lake's future or lack thereof, hit me up. Facebook, emails, wherever, Instagram. I'll be happy to talk about it with you. And until next time, I will see you next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.